Good evening. So, in this video, I'm talking about um, son, the topic sonship, and specifically, this week is going over. I was assigned chapter 6 to read chapter 6 of Supernatural Ways of Royalty and to talk about it and answer a couple questions that Jared wrote for me to answer. And so that's what I'm going to do. So the first question he asked me to answer was, "What do what did I believe about myself and who I am in my sonship before reading this chapter?" So I feel like before reading this chapter, um, I was I'm doing pretty good in my sonship and in um, knowing whose I am and that I am a son of God and that I need to act as a son of God and that I'm called to not just live in this world, I'm called to lead in this world, and then I'm called to um, kind of live as a prince in this world and not as a pauper because God has great things for me, and that um, my choices need to reflect that God has called me to do great things. And that sometimes it takes a bit of time to realize who you are, and it takes time once you, especially if you view yourself as a pauper, as this book is telling us, that most people do view themselves that way because that's the way that they've been raised to think, is that it takes time to be able to change the way you think. You can't just think overnight. You got to change habits. You got to change the way you live your life, and the way you treat others. It just takes time to be able to change anything in your life. I mean, any area. You can make a decision to not do something again, but it takes time to prove that you're not going to do it again. It's not just immediate. Um, so yeah, so I learned quite a bit in this chapter, and I feel like I can grow in several areas. Um, in this chapter, this chapter talks about um, continuing to grow into knowing who you are, whether you're a prince or a pauper. There's quite a few stories in this chapter alone that I really grasp. Um, One was the story when Bonnie, which is a supernatural school a ministry student from Bethel, um, when she was meeting with Chris Valentin about the school, um, she asked many questions of him and wanted to know like his credentials. What um, she just wanted to. She asked more questions of him than he asked of her, and I feel like that that really signifies, and he goes into detail about it too, is that she Bonnie knows who she is, that she was a daughter of God, that she knew who she was, and she wanted to make sure that where she was going, God was in. And so she was wanting to interview him. So she knew who she was, and that she was a daughter of God, and that she knew she was not a pauper, that she knew that she was a prince, and that because she had been raised that way, she had been raised to be um, a prince or a queen or a princess. She had been raised to know that she was valued, to know that she was loved, to know that she had good insight and good upbringing, and so she had loving parents, and that she was always treated like what she had to say or think was important. And I thought that that was pretty good to know. And she had been taught that way, but aren't taught like that, aren't taught that, so they have to learn it. And learning takes time. Um, so that was one of the things I learned, is that some people learn that from a young age, and some people have to learn that. But we have to learn that we're a prince. Another story that I really like from this chapter was when was that we need to realize that was the prophetic word when he was talking about one of his students was telling him, or some leader, I think, that they like hearing other people's prophetic words. And I thought that was really interesting. And because they're like, well, if I know what God's calling these people to be and to do, I can treat them that way. I can treat them the way that God sees them. And I thought that was so amazing. Is that he was thinking about that in the first place, to like that he knew his place and who he was to be as a strong Christian, but that he alone wanted to know about what God is calling others to do, to be, so that he can treat them that way. I was like, wow. So that's an area in life that I really feel that God can have me grow in, is, well, re-listening to my prophetic words and start to treat myself more the way that God wants me to be treated. By just reviewing my prophetic words. And then I also really, really want to do that, is kind of start paying attention when somebody else is called out for a prophetic word and I'm around them. I mean, so that I know who God has called them to be, so that I can treat them the way that they're supposed to be treated. In the way that God wants them to be treated. I find that really, really, really cool and really interesting. Um, and so that's kind of one of the things that I learned and that I can apply, is to review my prophetic words and listen to other people's prophetic words when I'm around them, so that I can treat them the way that God really sees them. And another thing that I learned is that not prophetic words, is that we need to speak positive and affirming into people's life, especially like in your family if you have kids or a wife or a husband, that what we speak at, into them, um, they they take on as who they are and their identity, whether it's that they're not important at all, or that they're the most important thing in the world besides God, and that God's called them to do great things. So we need to speak, and for me, I want to speak better. God has shown me I don't want to speak better about my brothers and call forth who God has called them to be more than what I do right now, because the the more I speak positively into them, the more it has a chance to possibly change the way they view themselves, and to know that they're called to reign and to be a prince, that God's called them to be that way. That really made me think and made me view myself as thinking about the way that I do things and wanting to change the way I do things and the way that may interact with them or treat them, so that they know who they are in the Lord. Thanks. Have a good night. Bye.